What are your names?
Bethany Dalton.
And Jack Dalton.
When was your house built?
The best that we can tell from the research that we've done, it was around somewhere between 1904 and 1907.
And how long have you lived here?
23 years.
23 years.
Do you know who built this house?
We are not sure. There's some maps that by an insurance company, Sanborn Insurance, and they show some structures, but they're not every year. So one set didn't show anything, and the next set after 1907 did. Right. So that's kind of where we're getting our information from.
What is the architectural style of this house?
That's a good question.
Maybe a colonial revival, some type of a Victorian. It just depends on when it was. The columns say one thing. You know, we have no gingerbread or other architecture like that. So I'm not real sure it's about it being a Victorian. The inside, with the center hall and the 4 rooms on each side, that's some type of a colonial revival, probably.
That's what we understand.
Do you know other families who lived here?
Yes.
Quite a few.
As far back as we know right now, the McBreer family, it was 2 sisters that never married, and one was the librarian at the high school.
Originally purchased the house.
The house. And they lived here for a very long time, like maybe 50 years.
50s or 60s, I'm not sure.
And then they sold the house to, let's see, it went from the McBreers to, I believe, probably the Pollards, Bill Pollard.
Maybe, but the Dunlaps are in there someplace.
Yeah, they may be before. I'm not exactly sure, but
I
then
think it was Dunlaps.
And then the Pollards.
Possibly.
And fortunately for me, Bill Pollard, who lived here, built the big garage because he had an appliance or furniture store downtown, and he needed the space for his appliances that he ordered. So we have a garage.
That's what sold me on the house.
Yes, and because most of the houses over here they were built before cars, and so there was only on-street parking, and fortunately we have a driveway and a garage. Let's see, and after the Pollards, Lamar and LeJune Jackson, she's a cook now, but they bought the house and they did a lot of interior updating. And then from there, I think it was the Bennetts, Larry and Julie Bennett. And then I believe it was the people's last name was Raper.
Right. He was a retired military chief petty officer.
And
they only lived here 4 years, and that was probably in the mid-90s.
Yeah, because we bought it in '99, and then they sold it to, I think it was Melissa and John Cummings, and they were here less than a year, and they had started doing some interior reconstruction, redecorating, whatever, and they sold it, and that's who we bought it from.
Right. It had been empty a few months.
Yes.
We never met the Cummings.
No.
They had already moved, and the house was just sitting there.
He was one of the ones that was, I believe, instrumental in starting the neighborhood association and doing some restoration on the park.
Did you mention who built this house?
We don't know.
Yeah, it was surveyed.
Excuse me.
And I figured probably, I don't know who owned all this property, but this was probably one of the first houses built. Not the first, but one of the first.
Oh, and we had a neighbor, Miss Hamlin, lived a few houses down, and when we first moved here, she told me that when she was younger, a little girl, that they used to love to come over here and look at night because our house was one of the first ones that had electricity. And there's 3 stories, 3 floors, and up in the very top,
It's just an attic.
It's just an attic, but there is still some original wiring and...
Well, there was. I think it's all gone now.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, there was still some up there. The old tube and knob and tube type wiring.
it was still
A
up
lot
in
of
the-
these houses probably still have that haven't been remodeled.
And we bought several others in trying to encourage people who wanted home ownership to move over here. And we did a lot of, from fuse boxes to breaker boxes,
Plumbing.
trying to get it where those people that didn't have any interest in that, they could still afford to buy a house. And so we, in addition to ours, we bought and started restoring 6 different houses over here. And so just to better quality of life. And like I said, we would sell them to people who may not be able to put the 20% down. We wouldn't require any, and that way they could have a home.
Mostly young couples.
Yeah.
Or young mothers.
Did I hear that this house is haunted?
Yes. And this is I'll give you 3 different times that something has happened since we have been here that we know about. The day we drove up with the realtor, we pulled in the driveway, and downstairs there's a big window. It's our bedroom now, and it had blinds on it. And I remember when we pulled up, I looked at the blind, and it was moving a little bit. And I never really thought anything about it until later when I realized there was no electricity on. There was nothing on in the house that would have caused that blind to move. And then Jack was still in the Army, and he was still stationed in Missouri, and I was down here for a few months before he came. And it was in April, I remember, because I had the windows open in the kitchen, and I heard something that sounded like raining. It was water, but it wasn't supposed to rain. And so I walked out in the back, and this happened, I know, 3 times.
I remember once seeing it.
And water would just be pouring off the house like it was raining, and it was not raining. There was nothing.
It hadn't been rain.
And
there was water running off the roof.
So we just said that the house was happy that we were here.
There were no bursted pipes.
No, there was nothing. There was nowhere that water could have been accumulated for it to, but it just would come off on all 4 sides.
We think the house was happy that we had moved in.
Yeah. But the strangest time, we had not been here long, and we had a neighbor that lived up on Madison, Nancy Panel, and she had wanted Jack to put a fan up for her, so we had gone up to her house to do that. And at the time, we had a little dog named Stonewall, and we never allow our pets in the front part of the house or upstairs. And Rebecca, Jack's youngest daughter, was living with us at the time, and she had driven to Clinton to see her mother. And this was back in 99 or 2000, I think. And we didn't have cell phones like we do now, and we had an answering machine. So I asked her to call us when she got to her mother so we would know she had arrived safely. Well, I called the house to check the machine to see if we had a message from her, and it picked up. And we could hear Stonewall barking in the background, and there was no one here. The phone upstairs in her room had picked up.
And we could hear the dog barking.
And we could hear the dog barking. So we left Nancy and ran down here, drove down here, and went inside, and everything was still locked, and he was happy barking, but the phone, it wasn't like it fell off. It was sitting in its cradle, and it was on. So those are the 3 times that we know of.
We've never seen ghosts or anything.
No,
But
those kind of things have happened. And, I'm sure there's a reasonable, logical explanation, but I think it's fun to tell what happened to us.
yeah, I mean, we don't know why, but we know what happened.
Yeah,
Wow.
but we have loved living here.
Yes.
There's no place we'd rather live. Sometimes I wish that we had a smaller house, because we have a 3,000 square foot plus house that we live in a little bitty section, just because we don't want to go upstairs.
But when we have family come,
It-
we got
it's-
room for them.
Right. And several years ago, we have a little garden club over here, Historic Northside District Garden Club. Anybody can be in it, but we had a tour of homes and for Christmas, and it was fun because our house was one of the houses that was on tour, and each room was decorated differently, you know, for Christmas. And those are some fun things to do. So,
But back to the house, originally this was a wooden porch, and at some point somebody concreted it, but if you go under it, you can still see the wooden planks underneath the concrete. So sometimes I wish it was still wooden, but anyway. Other than that, the back portion where the kitchen and our little area where we sit in our bedroom was added on at some point, because we have seen a picture.
Anita Buster has a picture that was taken of her when she was a teenager, and she is almost 80, and it shows the back of our house, and there's no kitchen there. The kitchen that's here now was not there, so it was probably added in the 50s or 60s.
Sometime after they got indoor plumbing and all that.
Yeah. And we have 2 bathrooms, which of course they weren't original to the house, and one is at the end of the hall, right where they just closed it in, and the other one is upstairs above our bedroom, and the ceilings are 14-foot ceilings, and it's been lowered to about 9 or 10 feet because
12. 14 on this side and 12 on that side.
okay, because the plumbing is not. That's where the plumbing is above the room.
But it's still a 12-foot ceiling
Yeah.
on that side.
And that's the room where you painted the Walter Anderson. And that's another thing, you know, these houses have been here, and I kind of look at them as we're just taking care of it now. And a few years ago, some of the neighbors decided they wanted to name their houses, and some people chose different things, but some of us picked novels of William Faulkner, and we picked Soldier's Pay. And
Because
that's what paid for the house.
Was that, you know, the pay, because we're both retired military,
Military.
so our pay paid the mortgage on the house.
So we said Soldier's Pay was great for us.
And
But
the dining room, which is on the side where the bay window is, that room still has the original beaded board ceiling
in it.
but it's the only one that still has the original ceiling. There may be beaded board under the plywood sheetrock that's on the ceilings in the other rooms, but that's the only room that still shows beaded board.
But just like with having you do that artwork, I want to leave something that future generations can say, oh, that was Miss Thompson. She was the art teacher at the high school. And Nancy Pennell did some window panels for me. And I have them. And then we have, in our dining room where the furnace would have been,
Well, it was when we moved here.
with the grate.
Yeah.
And Jack refinished that floor, so instead of just covering it up, he covered it, but we put like a frame around it, and we had 3 of our 4 grandsons do their handprints when they were babies. And so figured, you know, somebody one day may cover all that up, but I think it's fun to leave it and other things that I can come up with, you know, to do. So
Well, thank y'all.
you're welcome.
You're welcome.